all black everything, all black, you know, all black in the name of all my black heroes, all black everything, all black polos, all black medallions, yeah, all black, yo.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal, and we're joined here today by Professor Aria S. Halliday, Assistant Professor in the Department of Gender and Women's Studies and Program in African American and Africana Studies at the University of Kentucky. She's the author of the just published By Black, How Black Women Transform U.S. Pop Culture, published by our friends at the University of Illinois Press in April of 2022. Of By Black, Marae Miller Young writes, a brilliant and meticulously researched exploration of how ideas about representing Blackness have been essential to the story of American consumerism and popular culture, in uncovering how Black women has transformed corporate discourse of multiculturalism and diversity by inserting their own imaginations, capabilities, and desires. By Black provides an extraordinary feminist reading of the role of race, gender, and class in the American consumer product industry. Aria Halliday's book is essential reading. How are you doing today, Professor Halliday?
Doing so good. It's so great to be here on Left to Black. Thank you for having me.
So, tell me about this journey to this book, Aria.
Well, it started as a dissertation, as most first books do in academia these days. But I was really focused on why people love Nicki Minaj so much in graduate school.
This one is for the boys with the booming system. Top down AC with the coolest system. When he come up in the club, he be blazing up. Got stacks on deck like he's saving up.
Right? I grew up in a moment in Durham where, I would go to parties and girls had the blonde wigs and it was the two-tone and, it was like a competition to see who could be more like Nicki. And I was like, I don't get it. At the time, I've been a fan of hip hop for a long time. And I just was like, I don't understand why we like her versus a couple of other options. And so it really started as a project trying to figure out what it is about Nicki that was so compelling. And I was interested in the ways that people were drawn to her Barbie, aesthetic. People were really excited about her, Cinderella story as a hip hop artist. She was one of the, only Black women rappers at the time for about a decade. So I was like, okay, there's something about Barbie. There's something about Cinderella. There's something about Nicki that is really compelling, not only to a kind of pop culture environment, but to Black people, Black women specifically. And so in grad school, it started that way. And now it's like a completely different book. But, you know how that happens, that you're just like, okay, I have some other ideas here that I'm really interested in. And I think I honed in on the fact that Black women consume and produce for themselves. They have themselves in mind. And so the book is really thinking about that relationship, that connection between, the women who are at the tables making the decisions between what we buy and the consumers who are like, this doesn't feel like it represents me, or this does represent me because it looks like this.
One of the things I think in this particular moment, we don't question the fact that Black women as cultural producers and consumers are really pushing the narrative and pushing the industry to have to consider their buying power and then just their cultural influence, right? We can think about any number of white women, who've done various things to their hair and their bodies, their butts, in reaction to the influence of Black women. Right. But that's something we only really, I think, understand in this social media moment, right? When Black women are in a position to really control their narrative using Twitter and IG and TikTok and all these kinds of things, you really give us a larger historical narrative, right? This idea of how Black women have been incredible cultural influencers through their consumption products, right? And that it's not something that starts in this moment. Talk a little bit about that larger history.
Oh, I have to say the historians would probably beat me reading this book because I am not a historian, right? But
I get you. Cultural history matters.
Right, exactly. So doing cultural studies with a history perspective means that, I think I'm starting a conversation in the 1960s and 1970s. This is really where a lot of my intellectual work happens. And then I go to the archives and I see it's a conversation from the 30s, and then they're citing people from the 10s. And, it's 1905 when I start pretty much in the book, and I talk about Richard Henry Boyd, who's having conversations about the appropriate way to represent Blackness in doll form, you
Yeah.
know, and there's a filament that started in Germany that they were able to create, you know, brown. It didn't really exist in the same way before that. And so he's like, okay, this is our opportunity to make brown dolls for brown kids, as you know, in the term of Negro dolls for Negro children.
Right.
And this is really gonna allow us to do the radical racial pride work that we need to do with our kids, right? And then, you know, about a decade later, there's people like Marcus Garvey, who's interested in similar conversations, and he works with two Black women who already have a doll company to, you know, make darker skin dolls, right? And there's becomes again this argument about, is dark skin the appropriate way to represent Black people? Is a medium brown tone appropriate? What does the hair need to look like? How's the nose shaped? And so the conversations that we're having now, or at least I try to show that the conversations that we're having now about, you know, Harriet and who should represent Harriet Tubman in any kind of biopic, go all the way back to 1905 when they're arguing about what kind of nose a doll should have to teach racial pride to children.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating. We talked a few days ago with your University of Illinois Press colleague, E. James West, who's written these two wonderful books on kind of Chicago cultural newspaper and magazine culture, talking about Ebony magazine, right? And how Ebony gets pressured at some point because all the women who show up on the cover of Ebony magazine, you know, are light-skinned women. I don't recall a lot of examples of light-skinned Black dolls, right? But I do think about the facial features, right? And how, and just thinking about the kind of discussions that would have been taking place in the 1900s, right? About not only what kind of color captures Blackness, but also what should the lips look like? What should the nose look like, right? And also given all kinds of conversations about stereotypes and representations, right? So how do you present a real Black woman in a doll that also is a counter to these really negative stereotypes of Black women that are circulating in the larger culture?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's so interesting because I come across this narrative about this white woman, Sarah Lee Creech, who is working with Zora Neale Hurston. She's working with HBCU presidents. She's working with, you know, Eleanor Roosevelt to create this doll, you know, and she calls it the ultimate Negro doll for Negro children. And I'm like, okay, you know, what does that mean? To, you know, she says, you know, this is the first doll. Zora Neale Hurston says this is the first doll that's anthropologically correct. Right? They studied the faces of 1,000 Black children to create a doll that, you know, condenses all of that information into one form. Right. And again, these are HBCU presidents. These are, you know, large Black figures who are ultimately making decisions together about this will sell to Black people because it represents us. Right. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, you know, motivated by those, you know, racist stereotypes, the Topsy doll that's also on the market at the same time.
Right, right. You mentioned Marcus Garvey a few minutes ago, and I think there's a way from a contemporary view that as much as Black people are invested in the politics of optics and representation, it's often when that is a concern of Black women and Black girls that such activities are treated as frivolous among some of my male colleagues, for example, that, you know, folks don't necessarily see what the matter is to be concerned about what a doll looks like, right? In the larger context, right, of quote unquote achieving Black freedom. But you seem to counter that by suggesting the ways in which really mainstream Black leaders, you know, including Garvey, were really invested in this kind of representation, right? And of course, we know the work that Mamie and Kenneth Clark, you know, would do 2 decades later in regard to that. So talk a little bit about that, what seems like a disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, part of my purpose in studying what seems like kind of frivolous and innocuous kinds of items is that people are buying, Black women especially, but other people are also highly invested in what these dolls look like because they communicate something about our political commitments as
Right.
Black people, right? Garvey is really interested in how we not only do this larger political project around Black people going back to Africa, about, you know, creating opportunities for Black people to live and thrive in 1915, he's also talking to Black women about, okay, how do we teach this as a lesson to Black children when they're formative, when they have this moment that they can learn learn not only that, Blackness is beautiful and amazing, but what do we do with that Blackness as we age, right? And I think, from Garvey to Anna Julia Cooper to, there's so many other examples. People are highly invested in this conversation. And I think, part of the purpose of this book is to say it's not just a political conversation that only happens in political spaces, speeches and conversations in that way, but it also is happening in the marketplace and how people are consuming and creating products for us to buy.
There's a concept that you use throughout the book in your conversations about Black Barbie and Mattel, to some extent about the Disney princess canon. And definitely this comes up in thinking about Nicki Minaj, but this idea of embodied objectification. Unpack that a little bit for the audience.
Of course. So I started by thinking about, Brittany Cooper and Beyond Respectability. She mentions how Anna Julia Cooper does a lot of speeches specifically about Black women's experience as a part of a political argument, right? So she says, Black women ultimately have an embodied experience that they use to make arguments about respectability, but also about what our place should be in a political conversation.
Right.
So along with that, I think, okay, so there are Black women on pop culture stages like Nicki Minaj, like Dolls, like any of these things, who are also thinking about, how do we communicate what Black women's experience is, not only to Black children and other Black people, but to the white people who are also going to buy these dolls, to the other people of color who also are interested in a part of these conversations too. And so my idea around embodied objectification is that, yes, these women are putting themselves on display, like Nicki Minaj, for example, she's out there for everybody to see, but we're also not necessarily seeing her as a person, we're seeing her as a product. Yeah. Right. And so I think it means something that she's communicating to us, this is who I am. This is all of my texture and complexity, but this is a persona. Because when the cameras go off and the Twitter turns down and she disappears into her life, we don't know who that person is. Yeah. So part of my argument with embodied objectification is that there is a distance not only between what's created and what's consumed and an actual person, but also that what's consumed is created with that connection to other Black people in mind. I know what you want because I am also you. And I think that happens when we consume products and also when Black women are creating them.
Talk about the women who were influential at Mattel to create Black Barbie. I'm old enough to remember first seeing Black Barbies and of course old enough now to have had at some point young girls who, you got a choice between, do we get the Black Barbie doll? Do we mess with Bratz or something along those lines? Do we spend all this money on American Girl dolls? All of that stuff. But talk about the women who really pushed forward a project at Mattel for them to begin to think about, what you describe as kind of a material multiculturalism.
Yes. And so in about 1970, Mattel hires its really first Black woman designer, Lavinia. She's known kind of socially as Kitty Black Perkins. She's from South Carolina.
Welcome to Women on the Move, African American women achieving milestones in their careers. Kitty seems to take in stride the fact that she was the very first African American designer to be hired at Mattel.
When I came for the interview, I was given a Barbie doll and I was asked to take it home to dress. And I did. I was told to make one outfit. Well, I made 3. And it was so much fun that I just decided that this is what I have to do. I cannot go back to the fashion industry.
She's never really been a doll designer. She's created clothes in other ways. She's sewed. But she says, I want a job making clothes for dolls. I think I know how to do this. It's going to be fly. I know it's going to, it's going to do all the things that I want it to do. And I talk about in the book that she actually is using a lot of her conversations with her homegirls, a lot of her conversations with other people in the political space, particularly in LA after the, and we can all think about what's happening in LA at that time too, right? To create these dolls that not only, on the box that it has, she's Black, she's beautiful, she's dynamite, right? But she also has an Afro kind of Diana Ross flowy afro. It comes with a pick in the box. Mattel has never made a pick before, right? I mean, so it's obvious, right, that in 1980, when the doll comes out, not only is Lavinia Black Perkins the one who's actually making decisions about what this doll needs to have as an aesthetic project, right? What is her clothes need to look like? What her hair need to look like, and all that. But she knows from being a Black woman in the community what kind of narrative about this woman on the box, she's Black, she's beautiful, she's dynamite, is going to speak to other Black people when they see it.
I created the very first Black Barbie, and she was so different from Barbie, which was the intent, because I wanted her to have her own personality. I gave her a short natural.
And I think also, I talk a little bit about a company called Shindana, that was in LA after the Watts riots, who also was really invested in this project of, and I would say like a la Marcus Garvey, how do we, build up Black communities through, production. And so there's this company run by Black people who, used to be part of CORE, who were political activists, who are saying, we can make something that Black people want to buy, that white people want to buy, but it's going to be for us, right? The original for us, by us kind of product. And I think that both in the relationship that Shindana had with Mattel and in their decision to hire Lavinia Perkins, they are actively making the decision about cultivating a community at Mattel that's going to create Black dolls into the future.
Disney emerges as a primary competitor, right? With their Disney princess canon. And talk about some of the tensions at Disney between, do you take an existing Cinderella or Snow White and make them Black, right, to reach a different audience? So you got a Black Cinderella that's not Brandy. Or do you, create a narrative, a relatively newer narrative within Disney of a Black princess, right? And we know all the critiques about the Princess Frog. She spends 3/4 of the movie as a frog, right? Not as an actual, and literally only like the last 2 minutes as an actual princess. Talk a little bit about, what Disney is processing in this moment, right? And, and Disney's stakes are a little different than Mattel. Mattel's trying to sell toys. Disney's trying to sell a lifestyle that you're willing to pay thousands of dollars to invest in which the doll is just the entry point, right? And the cartoons and the movies are just the entry point.
Yes. I think you said this so perfectly. How are you asking me? I think that, Mattel is highly invested in creating, consumers for life, right? They're one of the first companies that are selling directly to children. And I talk about that relationship in the book. Ads are specifically for children, and they can go to tell their mom, hey, buy me this thing. Disney, though, is highly invested in a kind of communal purchasing experience, right? The parents are taking their kids to Disney. They get to dress up with the princess clothes. They can dine in with I know because you have daughters. You know this, right? That all of this is part of a kind of I think I say it in the book that it's like a cradle to grave consumer project, right? You are buying something from Disney every single year, whether you're going to the parks or you're buying something on the shelves or you're buying the movies, you're a part of this entire process from beginning to end. And some of that, right, they realize if we want to create an opportunity for Black people to buy into this narrative, not just because they like Cinderella and all these other princesses that also existed, that we need some buy-in from Black people, right? They hire and are highly involved with Whitney Houston when the 1997 Cinderella comes out. She was supposed to be Cinderella originally, and she's like, I'm too old for that, right? And so, so she handpicks Brandy. And then later when they do Princess and the Frog, they get Jennifer Lewis, Jennifer Lewis on it. They have Oprah Winfrey, right? There are a lot of people who are invested in creating the first Black princess, but later, I think, ultimately, even into the present day, while we might have a Black woman playing a mermaid, I think that there is a conversation and knowledge around the fact that Black people are highly invested in what our images look like, and we will pay to make it happen. And I think that Disney's investment is making sure, again, cradle to grave, you're going to want to consume. So even if you are in your 40s and you decide to have a child, you also want your child to experience that same Disney magic, they call it, that you also experienced as a child.
How much freedom, and I'm thinking of Nicki Minaj there in this moment. There's a way in which we talk about, Nicki Minaj representing something within this kind of pantheon, Black women rappers, Black women pop stars. I think folks will think that the women who've come after her don't possess the lyrical skill set that she has. But that lyrical skill set was really about her being able to attract male audiences to her music. She obviously is doing all this other kind of work, right, in terms of how she's embodied and her image and all of those things. What kind of space does she create for some of the women who come after her to also have a certain kind of freedom in terms of how they're embodied as pop stars and how they create themselves as kind of in embodied objects, right, for mass consumption?
Yes, I mean, I think Nicki, because there isn't really anyone else in a mainstream market at the time, she creates a lot of space for herself, right? Kind of almost immediately she starts making perfumes, right? Immediately she's in Macy's. Immediately she is, kind of all over the place. She has the pop culture influence. So she's rapping. She's also doing princess stuff. She's also engaging in Barbie aesthetics, right? She's trying to pull everybody in. And some of that is by creating, controversy, which I think is Nicki's favorite thing, right? So she starts beefing with Lil' Kim. She starts beefing with Remy Ma. She's like, I'm coming for all the old heads, right? And I want to be clear that she's not coming for some of the other ones, right? She's not coming for Queen Latifah.
Right.
She's not coming for MC Lyte. She's not coming for Missy Elliott even, right? She's real clear about which one she's coming for.
Who has status that she can come after,
exactly.
Right? Certain kind of status here, right?
Exactly. And I think that she knows that, to create space for herself, she not only has to communicate, that lyrical finesse that we understand and know and celebrated from Monster, but she also has to create buy-in from pop culture audiences who maybe want to listen to hip hop sometimes, but they also want to listen to, a pop sound. And I think she does really well to cultivate that relationship, not only because she signed to Young Money and she has to sign on of, Drake, who was also huge, becoming really huge at that time, but Lil Wayne, who's huge at that time, and even what that kind of machine behind you can do. But also she's, buying into that hyper feminine consumption product that I think is connected to, and I argue is connected to, the Cinderella and Barbie part. Like, you want to buy the lifestyle that is Nicki Minaj, not just the music.
How much did you play with dolls when you were a kid?
I did not.
So do you find, because it's kind of interesting, right? So I can't ask you the question, when you were playing with dolls when you were a kid, did you actually process the significance of it? But what do you think about the fact that you're writing about this and didn't really experience toys in that way and dolls in that way when you were a kid?
I talk about at the beginning of the book, I just spent time following my older sister around. She's 5 years older than me. And I would say even to this day, if she says something is cool, I'm following her down that road, right? So she didn't care about dolls. I didn't care about dolls. That just wasn't a part of our experience. But I'd say it's interesting to me to write about something that I didn't understand. I feel like, in every chapter of the book, I'm saying, other people are really into this and I'm trying to understand why. Because I almost feel like I missed that, Barbie Cinderella moment. I mean, I love, there are certain Disney princesses, I can sing Mulan from beginning to end. I know that whole thing, but I never bought all this other stuff, right? I wasn't interested in having the dolls. That wasn't just a part of my life. And so for me, it's really about, other scholars, a lot of feminist scholars are saying, there are these moments that completely change the way that, girls, especially, but children generally see themselves, not only as consumers, but as people. And so I was really interested in like, okay, but do Black people experience that in the same way? Because the audiences that a lot of these feminist scholars were pulling from were white girls, right? And white families. And I said, well, you know, I was in a Black girl camp and I didn't know, nobody was playing with dolls. So who were the people who were playing with dolls? I didn't see it, right? And so I was really interested in, you know, are Black people missing it, right? And that kind of larger conversation about, you know, do Black people participate in the market in the same way? And I mean, we do, but we have particular political and social connections to those particular products that we buy. And that changes a lot. And I think that's ultimately what the book answered for me is like, Black people are interested and they're working on those things. They're interested, they're buying these things, but they have particular investments in why and how they buy.
Yeah. The title of the book is Buy Black, right? Which is a historically loaded term. And I think when people see a term like Buy Black, they have certain kinds of expectations to read narratives about Black nationalist politics, Black nationalist capitalism, right? We think about all the signs in Black communities in the 50s and the 60s. You disrupt that for us by changing the narrative to think about outside of this kind of masculine discourse around Black consumer power and Black capitalism, right? That ultimately at the root of this, as women who make decisions in households for what gets bought to eat, right? What clothes folks are wearing. I mean, everything, right? You know, there's no Black buying power without, you know, Black women being arbiters of what gets consumed.
Absolutely.
Talking about that decision to kind of disrupt it, to use this title, Buy Black, for the book.
The title, I worked on this title for so long. As you know, the title means so much, I think, to what the ethos of the book is. And for me, I was really drawn to, especially in the past decade, you know, a lot of people have used Juneteenth, have used Black History Month, have used even the holidays to promote Black producers, right? Okay, buy your candles from this Black maker. When you go to Target, they have, you know, hair products and they have the faces of the, you know, Black women who created these brands. And so everyone, not just Black people, are highly invested in communicating, you should buy from Black people and this is how to do it. And I was really interested in not only like, why are we so invested in this idea that buying from this particular Black person, even though it's at Target, right? Or even though it's at Macy's, even though it's even though it's Mattel, that, you know, that still is somehow connected to what our political affiliations are around Blackness. And so I hope that the book, you know, extends some of the like nationalist conversation that you're talking about, because Black nationalism, even in the sense that we understand it as a political commitment to certain things, it also means that you buy and do certain things. I think about like Tanisha Ford's book around, like even Dressed in Dreams, her more recent book that's about like how we aestheticize ourselves and what that says about our bodies, right? Wearing a dashiki is not the same thing as wearing a t-shirt from Old Navy. It's supposed to communicate something about us and about our commitments. And I want to know why. Even as, you know, Black buying power in the US, and people say that it's a fake thing to think about Black buying power, but it has changed immensely since the 50s and 60s. And I think Black people are even more committed to having conversations about what it means to buy Black, even when those products are cultivated by white companies, especially.
What kind of conversation did you have with your editors at Illinois Press about the cover art?
So I worked with, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and one of my line sisters is an artist here in Austin, Texas. And I said, I want a cover that's gonna be striking to me. I want it to be beautiful. I want it to speak a little bit to the dolls, but I also wanted to call some questions. And so we talked a little bit about, you know, some of the topics of the book. Her name is Rachel Means, and Rachel and I, you know, really thought about, you know, what I want hair. I want Black girl hair texture. I want a dark skinned doll. There are certain things that I really wanted in the book. And I think, you know, the editors at University of Illinois Press were very supportive of what my vision was, thankfully. And, you know, Rachel, she knocked it out of the park because she sent me the sketches and I was like, I need this in my house right now. I'm in the process of framing the sketches because they're just so compelling to me, not only about the ways that I think about, Black girlhood, but also I love this image of like the doll kind of peeking out from the side of the book, enticing you to open the cover and read it. I just love that so much, and she got it like to a T.
Yeah. What's next for you, Professor Halliday?
Oh man, I'm working on another book. It is thinking a lot about, Black girls more specifically and the violence they experience in popular culture. So I'm thinking about, it's 2020, we're all at home, we're watching all of these shows and these movies, and somehow Black girls are always used as a trauma object.
Yeah.
Right. And other people's narratives. Other people have this evolutionary process. They learn to be empathic, they learn to connect with people, but usually there's a Black girl who is being harmed in the process. And I just have questions about that. So I'm working on a book that addresses hopefully my questions, but also maybe raises some others for other people.
We've been joined today on Left to Black by Professor Aria S. Halliday, Assistant Professor in the Department of Gender and Women's Studies and Program in African and Africana Studies at the University of Kentucky. She is the author of By Black, How Black Women Transform U.S. Pop Culture, published by our friends at the University of Illinois Press in April of 2022. Of By Black, Murray Miller Young writes, Aria Halliday's book is essential reading. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts, and every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything black, culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back.